Hi, my name's Hannah. I am your behavior analyst with the Spero podcast. This is going to be a take 3 or 4 today. We're having tech and have you ever tried to live stream? Have you ever tried to do any of this? So we're just going to be frank here. Like it's just a bear. And I'm not a tech person, so if you are, hit me up because I'm trying to figure this out. But I'm so glad you're here. And you know what? We're going to start from the beginning and we're just going to start over because today I wanted to talk to the newly minted BCBAs. And you know what? You're going to run into barriers in your programming and how you do things. And I'm running into barriers too. So we're just going to deal with how to look at them today. And so let's go ahead and dig in and share perspective because I have been a behavior analyst since 2015, but I started in the field back in '07. And I've run into so many different things that I wish I knew. So I wanted to take this opportunity with the show today and do something I wish a BCBA had done for me many years ago to where let's just share perspective and I'm going to bring in a little bit of my methodology. So just bring yourself a cup of coffee. I've got mine because I'm stressed. But it's all good because I don't want you to be stressed. And you know what? We're just going to have a drink and we're just going to chill. And we're going to talk about how can we make the world a better place? Because I know you got in this field because you want to empower people to live their lives to their full potential. And often people call behavior analysts because they're like, oh, have you ever gotten a client? They don't have any quote unquote maladaptive behaviors. And I even had this talk with somebody becoming a BCBA the other day. And I was like, we get called in for these crises. But you have this client who's coming in, we're doing assessment, and there's no behavior showing. And I was like, we get to sit with her and say, hey, these are what your records show. You're not, it doesn't look like you're doing this anymore. So if you don't want us to work on that, what would you like to do? What is your dream in your home? If you could do one thing, what would it do? We get to have that conversation. I got to do that recently. And I got to ask somebody, what would you like to do? And she goes, I want to read. I want to read on the phone because that's how everyone communicates. And like hearing someone say what they would like, not what parent wants, not what funding agent wants, but what the client wants. And then having the opportunity to partner in life to affect a possibility of change. Like, that's why we're in the field to help people. But we're doing it all wrong, guys. So that's what we're going to talk about. How are we screwing it up and how can we fix it? And I like to bring in my core three, okay, with the Espero methodology. I know I'm bringing in some of my coaching, but I do this within mentorship as well. And we'll talk about programming and parents and different things. But this is a dear newly minted BCBAs, and we call you this in a term of endearment because we just want to take care of you and help you grow. I know I mother everybody. But nobody knows I'm the mother age because I just blend in with the kids. So we're good. But anyways, okay. So have your drink and hopefully the technology is working. I do apologize if the video is not. I'm working on this. And you know what? I keep telling the universe, telling my friends that, and I know I might be digressing today because you know what? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to digress a little bit before we dig into nitty-gritty clinical stuff. That I'm going to keep doing this until the universe opens a door and opens a window or shows me another path. Otherwise, I'm just keep going. We're just going to keep getting back up because on my Spero Moment podcast, I talk about life is full of mud and you keep getting thrown mud and you keep getting knocked down. And sometimes I want to stay in the mud for a minute because I'm like, we all get there, like whether you're at work or in your personal life, but then you get the strength to stand up and you get to wash the mud off and you find there was something good in the mud. And that's what like. Everyone looks at maladaptive behaviors as so much mud, but there's beauty in neurodiversity. There's beauty in differences. And the beauty in maladaptive behaviors is that you get to learn what a human actually wants and you can help them get that. Because for those of you who are not in the field of behavior analysis or in early intervention or working with individuals with IDD or neurodiversity of some sort, we get a lot of maladaptive behaviors and we don't look at the person. We don't look at what they actually need. So in the core three that I like to do, and this is kind of this is kind of how I do everything, is these three things. You need to learn the person, you need to marry the pieces, and third, you need to, and you would think I would have this memorized, morph for progress. And I keep thinking I should say pivot, but morph because it's bigger than a pivot, because sometimes you got to overhaul it. So for those of you that are new, and those of you who don't know who I am, I've been doing behavior analysis since '07. So I'm an OG a little bit of the OG. And I want us to look at how we're doing treatment now, because those of you who are new, you are our future. And if we can empower you to learn things we didn't learn and the screw ups that we did that you can't, it's like studying history. We learn from history. If we can't empower you in that way, what's the point? To do better in the world, right? So, and you're in this, I'm very sure of, I haven't met a clinician who's not, to make people's lives better. So, in these three, the first one is learn the person. No matter if you're in OBM, ABA, or applying behavior analysis, or you're a teacher or a caregiver, anything working with other people, learn the other person. Because if you're serving another person, why are you bringing your own agenda? That is one of the biggest downsides of behavior analysis right now. Because welcome to the world of nobody likes behavior analysts. And I know why. I completely understand why. Because a lot of them go in and say, do X, Y, and Z. Teachers do not like behavior analysts. You know why? Because we go in there and make them do more work. They don't see the value in it, because here's the thing, the analysts are not stopping to learn the people. They're not learning teachers, they're not learning parents. I have found, this is just general information, and in my gut, this was what it was, and then I found out it was true, that behavior analysts, the largest majority of them are white females who never had children. They're in their 20s or 30s. They may or may not have a life partner. And this is all they've done, and they haven't had life experiences. Oh, and they're middle class. Going to tell parents what to do with their kids. Now, I'm a parent of two kids. I would not listen to you because you have no kids. So who are you to go in and tell people what to do? Now you are the professional in a sense, and in some cultures that's looked upon, but we're making people talk our language. We're not learning our person. We're forcing them to learn us. I know of a lot of people are like, they're throwing the word motivation and reinforcement. You know how long it took me? And this is, yes, this is true story. Took me to know the definition between, and this is for behavior analysts, I apologize for those who are not, the definition of an SD versus an MO. It took me 10 years for someone to say it's this and it's that. And it's all I needed. Nobody told me that. I've been applying the principles forever. Did I need to know the term to make a difference in people's lives? No, I didn't need to know the term. Why are we making our clients learn our field instead of us empowering them? I have I know of someone who had a kiddo getting ABA services, and the BCBA came in and said, you need a motivator. That's what's going to change this, because she basically wanted to do a flexibility program. And this is a single mom of two kids. Now, I'm a single mom of two kids, so I understand the brainwashing feeling of when you parent two little beings. And then let alone throwing in all the therapies, like that just sounds like a lot. Like I have a lot of respect for parents that are going above and beyond, and it's because they want the most they can do for their kids. And I get it. You don't want to look back and think, what if I'd done something else for my kid? What if? And so you do all you can. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And this clinician, all she did was kept telling the mom, you need to find a motivator. But she never figured out mom's motivator and mom's value. And I bring this into how I do my methodology, is of coaching, is bringing in values. Mom's value was joy, and they were asking single parent, to piss off one of their two children and break their value with no opportunity of support long term? Because turnover of staff, you can't guarantee it, right? Why did this clinician have that audacity to do that? And here's the thing, if your treatment's not working, and we'll talk about that, there you missed something. But the clinicians are not learning the person. There's different ways you can learn, and I have all of the ways that I do it. Learn your person, how they're hardwired, their values, what motivates them, because, excuse me, because if you catch the real why of why your treatment's not working, like this is this is what I like to do, because I never ever want to impose on people in that audacious way of I know more than you, because I don't. I don't. I like to ask, how can I help? What can I do for you? If there's anything else we don't get that we get to today, what would you like to do today? And it's so looked down upon our field to understand the person who's like, oh, it's the ethics code, no dual relationships. Yeah, but you don't have to have a dual relationship to have human compassion and put them first. And anyway, so learn the person. If you're an OBM and you're learning a system, learn your system. Because once you learn your system, your person, your client, your group, whatever it is, because it's always going to have its own being and its own essence, marry the right pieces. And that's the second piece. And I say that because marry is a common word. We think of the joining of two entities, but I'm thinking of like all of the pieces. You have skills, you have development, you have the Y factor, which clinically we like to say the function of behavior, but here we're going at the Y factor because it's more fun. And the values, and you got to take all the right variables. And if you have the wrong variables, treatment will not work. I had a client once that was about 10 or 11, had not decades. The clinicians had been in the field at least over a decade. I was a brand new BCB. I was newly minted, didn't know anything. And I went in, I screwed up because my boss BCBA was like, "You were not supposed to tell the parent their funding was ending." I'm like, "But it was. Why would you keep that a secret?" And so I went in, and this client had not been making any progress. There was no, no toileting going on. There was no social skills. There was none of this stuff was happening that would have brought value to this kiddo's life. And I went in and I said, "Hey, mom, you take 5 lessons. I'll come up with 5. We'll have 10, and that's all we're going to do." Because I wanted mom to have a say. And then I would look at the clinical piece and be like, hey, if we have to drop, because there were 30 lessons, this client had 30 lessons and at least 30 hours of treatment a week. Now, this child was not in school. So, and we couldn't do academics. So, but nobody was making any progress. Come to find out, when I was looking at these 10 programs, because I narrowed it down and broke the rules, I overhauled it. I was like, you're not making progress. We're going to make it happen. Hope the story isn't too rambly. But I was new. I went in. I broke the rules on the quote unquote how you're supposed to do it. In 3 to 6 months, normally, you know how when you have a little kid who's like 2 or 3, there's at least 30 mastered targets in a month. At least, at least. This child, out of the 8 curriculum areas, mastered 100 in one area. Why? Because we found the right pieces. And by going in and overhauling, I did the morph for progress. Often when I take over a case, I overhaul it. I do. Just because my style is very different than any other clinician I know. And I don't want to assume anybody's ever programming perfectly, even if they've been doing it longer. Like, sure, analyze my programming too. If I'm off, let me know, because I want to make sure there's progress. What's the point if we're not making progress? Why would we not morph? Why would we not swallow our pride and be like, oh, you're right, I missed that? Because it's opportunity for your kiddo or the adult or whoever you're working with. And so I overhauled it, but the pieces that I found were tendency that new clinicians tend to do. And they overestimate what their client can do, so the lessons were too advanced, so the kiddo wasn't learning. They were adding verbal SDs that were not necessary. This kiddo learned to carry their communication device with them. They'd had it for years, never hardly used it, definitely never carried it, learned to carry it in 2 weeks. And that was with minimal treatment because mom was on board. Parent involvement is crucial. That's why I really enjoy coaching with parents, because parents at the end of the day are the one being that ideally is in that kiddo's life for forever, for many, many years, right? So that's where the focus should be in the stable entities that are in kids' lives. So those are the three core things that I look at. And then I want to look at some things because I had a mentorship recently with somebody, and it was how to program. So I've been finding in a lot of the newly minted conversations on Facebook and things like that, that you guys are programming strictly off of assessments. Now, I'm actually curious. I would love to know why. Why are you only using an assessment? Well, you might say because it's funding. That's nice, but is funding the ultimate goal? There's full on CE events that are just talking about handling insurance. Well, here's the thing, insurance personnel don't understand what we do. And no, we don't, most of us do not have medical development type of training, but we do know the habits. Now, use I use a curriculum, and I needed a framework to build off of that are all the building blocks. So direct message me if you want to know what I use. Other people use other types of resources for your programming, but I would highly recommend do not program off of an assessment because you will run into a wall. Because what you're doing is gathering the wrong pieces and you're not learning your person. So you will not make progress. Even if you attempt to morph, you need to morph with more pieces. You need to go back to the second part. I start with learning the person because if you don't know your client and you don't know the environment, your client's not going to be successful. And nothing you do is going to be permanently successful. It's like putting in a picture exchange communication and parents aren't bought into it. I've seen adults in day programs who used to do picture exchange, but they don't anymore because they didn't generalize and because the caregivers also did not implement it. So it was basically wasted time when we could have done something else with this person to empower, to benefit their life down the road. So you have your programming. I take a lot of programming also outside of ABA. Like I take a lot of tips and tricks from OT and PT and fitness coaches and nutritional coaches, like nutritionists. If I get to like be a fly on the wall, from psychiatrists, from psychologists, from therapy, from life coaching, I pull the pieces because what if a piece from another field is going to help my person? Like I had a client once and she couldn't wash her back. I have that a lot with adult clients. They can't wash their back, and I'm too tight apparently. I might need to work on myself. Anyways, they can't wash their back. And I found out through a fitness friend and a book that I bought that there's an exercise you can do that actually stretches and you hold on to the towel and you're pulling at it, right? And the I ask my when I work with clients, and this is like in an administrative home, what I would do is say, hey, look, do you want your client to be able to actually wash their own back, or do you want to teach them to use a modified, like, those scrunchy things on a stick so you could reach, or, whatever it is? Um, which one would you like? These are options. Would you like to do the stretches daily and get medical evaluation to make sure that this is going to be okay for the client? Because I can't recommend it professionally. I can say, hey, this is an idea. Take it to your medical, all the other professions that would better recommend and make sure it's okay for that client, because maybe there's something medical I don't know about, just to rule that out. Why would you not look outside of behavior analysis to get the right pieces? I do think a lot of times we think we do know it all. And I recently heard about the Calaba and how they were talking about, what was it, keeping humans first. I wasn't there. I saw a TikTok about it, and it was all about AI. You guys do remember that when behavior analysis was first started with the first population, it was with children in residential homes who were diagnosed with autism, who could not speak, and they tried to use robots to make behavior analysis work to help children speak, and it didn't work. You know why? The first word that was said, the child was pissed and talked to the adult. Yes, that's where the first communication came from. They were manning for cessation in the clinical sense. And a lot of you don't know how to even program for that. Did you know that if you can't teach someone to say no, how many more problem behaviors you're going to have? And how many times I see a client who's had treatment for years and were never taught to say no? If you couldn't say no, you'd get pissed off and blow up and hit people too. Be forced to do things. So in your programming, look at what's going to add value. We talk about social validity, but I don't think we actually understand it. What's going to help them down the road? Now, I do recommend working with more than children, because once you've worked in schools and other spaces of older clients, you see where they go and you see what actually would have helped them long term. You see how it broke down, and at that point, you're programming for quality of life, and it's a different form of programming because every skill has to directly correlate with an excessive behavior in order to reduce it. You don't have the luxury of programming 30 skills. You just don't. And then you have to look at the space they're in and the staff or the home, or, their values and what they would like to do as well, because it all comes into play. So for effective treatment, learn your pieces and learn your person. And don't be afraid to be like, oh, I didn't know. There's another thing a lot of people do for their programming and their problem solving. And this is what I see all over Facebook from newly minted BCBAs. They say, what does the research say? Every time I see that, my first thought is, we're never going to have enough research. That's just what it boils down to. For BCBAs, newly minted, there's not enough research. And if you go outside of ABA, often in our field, it is looked down upon and not respected because it's from another field, which is terrible. We could be learning and we could be merging to make the world a better place. Now, you might say that's my opinion, but I don't see pure ABA working with all the clients. I see it work when you throw the traditional out the window and you bring in what's in front of you. So, this is what I usually message with people. And I ask more questions because I'm trying to learn the person and understand the situation to have the right pieces. And then I list options, but I usually end up with your answers right in front of you. Have you talked to your people, your client? Like, even in that supervision that I did, I don't remember if I did it in this formal recording, but I had a conversation with my with someone I supervise, and we have somebody who's not demonstrating excessive behaviors, and they or she can have conversations, and she's probably in her 20s somewhere, and she's new to this home, and my soon to be BCBA is very excited, which is great. Like, I love it. But I remember this conversation, and we're called in for crises to decrease problem behaviors. That's what people think. Behavior is a bad thing. No, it's not. We know it's a neutral thing, but the rest of the world doesn't. So we get to have the opportunity to have a conversation with this client to say, what would you like to do? Because we saw that you did these things that are not going to help you in your day to day life. But if you don't do them anymore, we're not going to have them in the paperwork. It's just a historical thing. What would you like your new home to be like? Who would you like to be? If you could do one thing, what would it be? See if you can bring their dreams to life. And that's what we get to do as clinicians. Now, we often forget that because when you're not a parent and you're working with parents and you're working with kids, why don't we figure out what their dream is and bring it to life? So, learn your person and then marry the right pieces because there was one kid I remember years ago we were working with this kiddo and working on strengthening different things to help encourage communication vocally. Come to find out, there was a special, I don't know what the name of it is to this day, but there's a special subgroup in speech that specifically works on building the muscles in the mouth. Come to find out, the assessment he got within that speech basically said he did not have the muscles to talk, even if we had the right behavioral strategies in place to encourage speech. So he went through that speech treatment and he was able to express some. It was never like full on conversation or anything like that. But it showed me that you have to get the right pieces. And now I'm always like, okay, is our motor good? Is our medical good? There was one kiddo who was having seizures, and they were doing 3 target random rotation for discrete trial training. And I know there's a lot of heat about DTT, and I would go into it on a separate conversation on how do you actually do repetitive learning, but in a natural, non-restrictive form. Okay, because I did my grad research on it. So because in real life there is discrete trial training. We just don't call it that. How else do you learn to read sight words and multiplication facts? It's over and over. But anyways, this child, come to find out, would lose skills after a seizure. And it was the newest skill. Like all these we would be like, oh, we have the perfect behavior analysis set up for teaching. But because of medical, she was losing what she was learning based on how her brain was wired and how the seizures were affecting her. So the clinician caught on to that and changed, she morphed the treatment in order to accommodate for that. And that way, after every seizure, they'd be aware of what to do. So you have to find the right pieces and look at more than just the assessment when you program. It's not about the assessment. Yeah, that's nice and all for funding. But at the end of the day, do all children across the entire world get these assessments? Is that child development that you're looking at? Probably not. And what else do you program? How can your answers are right in front of you and they're all around you with other fields. And so you want to marry the pieces, the right pieces, and pull them out if they don't work. And just don't go to research. I don't know why everyone, I know, well, I know why, because we're told to go to research, but research doesn't have the answers. And it's not sometimes going to fully apply to your client. And that's okay. It's okay to think outside of the box. That's where I've seen the most success with people is throw the box away for a little bit and just say, hey, what can I do? And be vulnerable. Like for me, I always think of authenticity. Be you and be present and know that you don't know everything. So learn to program. And then a lot of people are like, oh, OBM. And okay, I'm going to give you a secret about OBM. It's not anything different than what you took your exam for. It's literally the behavioral principles in a different way. It's like saying, here's one vanilla cake and another vanilla cake. You're just eating them in 2 different places. One's at a restaurant, one's at a picnic. It's the same principles. But I do know that in our field in general, uh, problem solving and thinking outside the box is not encouraged. So it's not a skill that's developed very well. So being able to translate it, you need more experience. And I get that because when I was new, oh, I messed things up. I had successes, but I also didn't know things. And I was told that the hardest clients from somebody who worked all over the world, she goes, the hardest clients to work with, as far as like working with the caregivers, were New York and Pleasanton, California. And guess who I got? as a newbie and didn't know things, I got Pleasanton. But you know why they were difficult? In New York, is you had to have the right credentials and have the right look and like all of that. That's what I'm gathering. But in Pleasanton, you gotta know your stuff. And I was learning how to do that with another clinician who was absolutely amazing. I just want to follow her everywhere and be like, can I just follow you? But you don't know what you don't know. And yeah, I just wanted to take some time and just have a heart to heart conversation, a sense of learn your people. You need to ask questions because none of us ever know enough, and be humble enough to know that. And look at the pieces. Research is not going to give you the answers. And intentionally focus because, and then this is going to go outside of behavior analysis a little bit. When you're focused on the funding and that's what you're fighting for, if you're not careful, you lose perspective of your client. And I say this because of the types of questions I've seen. All the questions I see are about funding. And then there's another thing I noticed that I wanted to make sure to bring up today. Newly minted BCBAs are like, oh, I'm just going to go start a clinic. I've been doing it for a while. I'm going to ask you something before you do that. Actually, two things. One, do you know how a business behaves? If you don't, please don't start a business. Just don't. Learn how business works. Go work for somebody running a business. Ask to learn because businesses behave, but they don't behave the same as the human. But the humans inside the business have their own behaviors, as we all know within the OBM component. And get more than just some experience clinically because you're going to be thrown between clinical expertise and operational business running expertise because you might need to market, you might need your administration, you might need to balance the books, you might need, like, you have all these pieces that maybe you've not considered. Know more than what you think. Go learn more before don't do it right away. Go learn from someone who is doing it because there are people who know both clinical and operational. Go find them, learn from them, soak it in so that when you do start your own clinic, which is often the dream job to have your own clinic because you want to help people. I get that. But you can't help anyone if you don't know what you're doing. And people might be like, oh, it works. Other people are doing it. But are they actually helping people or are they just creating more wait lists and more poor services? I mean, think about it. We have a reputation for a reason in the field of poor services. There's a reason that is there. So I hope all of this is helpful perspective because I've seen all of this on Facebook for conversations. Hit me up if you have any questions. Be more than happy to help. But I hope that looking at the three core of learn your person, marry the pieces, morph for progress, and different aspects to look at to make sure that you're actually providing the service that's actually it's actually going to help people in the long run. So feel free to find me on my coaching website right now is sperosolution.com. And then you can find me on my YouTube. Of course, if you're watching it here, all my socials are hspero.show. And I'm usually on there. Hit me up there. And we can talk soon. Feel free, to message me. Come on the show. We can shop talk live. And hopefully, this gives you something to look at to grow as a clinician, that there is possibility to make the field better, but we have to do it in our own micro choices and our own micro treatment and growth as clinicians to actually change the field for the future. And I'll see you again next Tuesday at 12, if I'm not exactly on time or having technical issues. And I'll see you again soon.